Hello, everyone. So, for those of you who don't know already, my name is Jared Grimbaum, and I'm going to be reviewing this textbook called Communicating in Small Groups Principles and Practices by Stephen A. Beebe and John T. Masterson. So, this book is the 11th edition. It's not the latest edition, but it's still recent enough to be significant. So, while I'm not an expert in group communication by any means, I think that this is a very good book for starting out, but getting familiar with group communication. This is the first textbook that I've ever read completely on the subject, and it was an educational experience. It taught me a definition of small group, which was that a small group is composed of 3 to 12 individuals, but can be up to 20. But the problem with having more than 13 individuals, according to the authors, is that you lose interaction as you get more people in the small group. So in addition to that, a small group is about communicating among a small group of people who share a common purpose, who feel a sense of belonging to the group, and who exert influence on one another. So it also differentiates between a small group and a team, which is a small group of individuals who are organized together for the purpose of completing a task or goal. So while the book appears to be geared towards college students, it doesn't seem to be geared specifically towards freshmen. It's more geared towards upper division courses, because from what I gather, based on what I read from the book, it seems that a lot of the information that would be in maybe some basic public speaking courses is not really expanded upon in the earlier parts of the book, where you would expect to find more detail on that. Also, when it does mention some of the basic material, that material is covered very briefly, and it could easily fill up a chapter in another communication publication, but that is not the case in this book. So also the textbook is divided into 3 sections. So chapters 1 through 4 are on the foundations of group and team communication. Chapters 5 through 9 are on the managing of groups and team relationships, and the remaining 3 chapters are on managing group and team tasks. So each chapter was designed in a way that helps the instructor choose it allows the instructor to choose whatever order they want to teach the material in. So rather than having material earlier in the book that it talks about the basics and then building upon that later, what happens is that instead of that, what happens is you have information that's not very basic, but still you have information that might have been in a previous section that is included in additional chapters later in the book. So it seems like this use of space could be a bit better, and could be used a bit better if they included other material that I'll be talking about in just a bit. So also at the beginning of the book, in the preface actually, it talks about the goals that the authors are trying to achieve. So these goals, they are that they're trying to make the book the material in the book presented straight to the point, and they don't want to include lots of detail or examples or even narratives, because they think that would take away from being concise and to the point. So the information presented in the textbook comes off as being too condensed, and it seems like they're trying to include way too much in too little space. Also, the information that they present as a result often seems like it's not getting as much detail as it needs to. This is especially true for me as somebody who is more of a visual and kinesthetic learner. I find it difficult that they don't use lots of narratives or try to get me involved in in how to go about reading the material, or even have very many images. So all of those contribute to me not really being able to focus too well on the material. So also, another thing that is important from this textbook is that really they should have included more textbooks they should have included more material that talks about they should have included more examples and really examples that relate to the chapters. Their images, when they do use them, and graphs when they do use them, is never very effective. And it doesn't really seem to relate. So that would be one thing that this book could definitely improve on. Another thing is that when the book talks about different theoretical perspectives in communication, what happens is that they really only seem to talk or focus on the functional perspective and social identity perspective. And this creates a problem because they don't really seem to ever voice any other of the perspectives that are out there in regards to communication. So for example, like the feminist perspective or the psychodynamic perspective. And each one of those could really change the way that all of this material would be described. So, also, while I've been kind of critical of this book so far, it really does have some good examples. It really does have some plus sides to it, which would be, say, how in each chapter, in the middle and at the end of each one of the chapters, there is a review. And these reviews, although the material when it's presented in the chapters seems like it isn't going to be it doesn't seem like you can understand it very well. Then once you get to these mid-chapter reviews and end-chapter reviews, all of a sudden everything becomes a lot clearer. They present the information a lot better in just these shorter sections than they do when they talk about them maybe at more length when it's actually that topic in the portions of the chapter. So also, you can tell that the authors are trying to engage the reader in some chapters. Like in chapter 5, they try to have you jot down information about yourself when talking about your own, identifying your own self and how you fit into other groups. But really, they don't completely ignore different learning styles, but they clearly don't try to help people with other learning styles, aside from maybe people who can just read and understand the material by reading. So one other thing is that I do appreciate about this book is that they try to include information that is about the most recent technology. And having that information about the technology, I think, really helps them, or the authors appear to be relatable, and unlike other people who would probably be writing textbooks, generally might think of them as being older, they actually seem to know what they're talking about because of how they include all this information about social networking. So, for example, they talk about Skype and Facebook and a few other social networking possibilities. And also, while they don't really do such a good job of addressing diversity, they at least try. So they do focus more in just one chapter on diversity and culture, but really, with someone like me who is more interested in diversity and culture within small groups, that's probably my favorite area that would probably be my favorite area to research in small groups, based on what I understand from the textbook, it doesn't really go into very much depth about that or any other material in the book for that matter. So really, this book by Beebe and Masterson, it has a lot of good information, but it doesn't really seem like they achieve their goals that they talk about in the preface by trying to address diversity and also trying to stick and be really concise and clear, because by trying to be too much to the point, they have kind of made it so that a lot of detail is missing. So although it could be bad that they don't go into the detail, at least it's a very good starting place for a textbook if one is to look at a textbook about small group communication. So that's it, and thank you.